Are you ready?
Power. You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
I'm building an alliance.
God bless the internet.
Okay, let's party.
It's showtime.
It's time for the Alliance Guys podcast, with your hosts Kevin Frazier, Jaden, DKM, and J. Cal.
Welcome to the Alliance Guys podcast, a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. My name is J. Cal, and normally I have a couple of pals here with me, but it doesn't look like it might be solo tonight. But that's okay, because I've got you. I've got the NWA fam. I've got the Alliance here with me. So we can talk all things NWA. We can talk about NWA Power. We can talk about that World Junior Heavyweight Tournament. We can talk about POWERRR Trip. We're going to pretty much go wherever the flow takes us tonight. And I want to say hello to my friends here in the house already. Dave Scooby, the man responsible for the audio for the intro. We've got Willie Bowens in the house, Chris Drummond, Terry McDermott. Hello, my friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Did you see the poll? Do you agree? Do you think that the NWA, like Matt Cardona suggests, should adopt a more modern approach? As a fan, a longtime fan of the National Wrestling Alliance, I have witnessed hours upon hours of the NWA, not just in the modern era, but also of the NWA of the old. And I'm talking about NWA throughout the years, NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, NWA Mountain State, NWA Smoky Mountain. And that studio vibe of the pro wrestling is kind of where we've been. I mean, Kevin, my pal, I wasn't sure you were going to make it tonight. Thanks for joining us. This is the Alliance Guys podcast.
I'm good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm about 15 minutes out from the house, so I'll be back in my studio on my kitchen table here in just a few. But I couldn't miss it tonight, man.
Well, I mean, you've been on Twitter. You've been hearing about some of the stuff that's going on. We currently have a poll in the live chat. Do you agree that with Matt Cardona that the NWA should adopt a more modern approach?
I mean, what do we mean by modern approach? Because the wrestling style that they use in the ring is some is pretty much modern. I mean, it's a hodgepodge in some ways, but I mean, everything they do pretty much is modern. So I mean, I don't know. I just think they're not using entrances and stuff because maybe they don't have the the faculties to do it, because when they do their pay-per-view shows, they set up a stage and they do use music. So, I mean, is it the NWA's style, or is it because they really just don't have access to do that sort of thing? I don't know. It's a good question.
So our pal Chris Drummond says that you can have a mixture of both. And I guess the approach that they're taking, using that studio style of wrestling, having that focus, be, that old school approach, I guess. I really don't know how to quantify it in words, but, yes, the lack of a soundtrack, a lack of a music, entrances, putting the venue in a smaller studio as opposed to, wrestling and trying to do some more arena type shows. Some of the things that Matt's talking about is basically, a byproduct of COVID, right? Because 2 years ago, we were talking about the NWA doing a Crockett Cup in a smaller arena. That was, the venue was announced, tickets were on sale, and then, of course, this global pandemic put everything on pause. How do you feel about that, Kev? Do you think like maybe the COVID-19 is responsible for the NWA's lack of forward movement when it comes to bigger venues?
I mean, I think so to some extent, but I also think they're really not trying to move towards bigger venues. I mean, it doesn't feel that way. I know they did the thing at the Chase, but I haven't really seen an effort to that. And I also wanted to make note that in the Austin area's Red Titus, and before you interrupt me, just hear me out, they had 30 people on camera behind the camera, and their response on the broadcast team was, "Oh well, we're at limited capacity because of COVID restrictions," which I call straight up lie, because everybody was sitting next to each other. Everybody was sitting in rows behind each other. That's not COVID protocols. So I'm not sure I'm buying that. That's just my thoughts on it. I mean, wrestling is best when you have a good live audience. I'm not saying you've got to have, 10,000 people like a WWE show would normally have on a good night for television. But I also think having a studio audience of 200-300 people really would add to the ambiance, so to speak. And I also think could the NWA draw 200 to 300 people for a studio audience in the current format that they're with what they've got going on right now?
Well, let me first address the first thing that you said, and that's with regards to the COVID-19 protocols. The thing is that the Georgia Public Broadcasting Studio is government owned. So they do have stricter protocols for how many people they're going to allow in the building. Now, to your point, what was, ideally, why are you having everyone sit together if these protocols are in place? But they generally, or genuinely, I should say, refunded tickets. They genuinely were sending out refunds. A couple of people in our Discord channel even said, hey, they just called me or just messaged me and told me my tickets were canceled and issued refunds because the setup for that venue, because it's on government property, was not able to have as many people. And I heard it from more than one person, so I tend to believe it. Just from an optics standpoint, they should have done something a little bit different to spread that crowd out, because it certainly looked rough. And that was from the Hard Times pay-per-view.
Yeah, well, and we know, Jay, that perception is reality. And so even if they were refunding tickets, they don't look credible having everybody jammed there together if you're talking about following COVID protocols.
No, I agree.
I mean, again, this is certainly not a path or an avenue we want to stay down, because certainly there's enough COVID talk going everywhere else that we don't need to have it here. But to me, it kind of just didn't make sense. Anyway, that's what I got.
No, I mean, look, I feel like the effort was there when they showed up at the 73rd anniversary show in St. Louis with Empower, going into that new venue. I think that was great. I think that was a step in the right direction. I do believe it was a step back, going back to the studios to tape a pay-per-view. And we know that they're doing this premiere live event on the 12th in Oak Grove, Kentucky, back where they were in October of 2021. But the real kicker to all of this is that they did announce that the Crockett Cup is happening. They haven't specifically given us a venue, but they said Nashville, Tennessee. So we don't know if that's the Asylum. We don't know if that's Skyline Studios. We don't know for sure what that plan is, but they are not in the GPB for the next round of pay-per-view and TV taping. So, it'll be very telling where this venue's at. If it's at the Asylum, again, I feel like they're making a step in the right direction. If they're in the Skyline Studio, back in a studio environment, again, I'm back with you, where I'm wondering, are you making the adequate steps to get to that right next spot?
Yeah, I agree. I just think I agree that the chase was a step in the right direction on some levels. I definitely thought their production from that venue wasn't very good, but it was a step in the right direction. It just really, I think model-wise, the studio can work. It's just how you do it. It needs but it needs to feel like something different. It doesn't need to feel like a couple of fans there and a bunch of wrestlers in a studio where you can hear the announcers talking in the ring, kind of thing, because that just isn't the feel. My question is, if they're already in Georgia, I mean, all they got to do is cross the border down here to Florida, and they can do whatever the heck they want to do. I mean, I'm just being real. I'm not being funny. There's nothing. It's almost like nothing's going on here in Florida. So they're not that far. I'm just kind of wondering why they're not looking at that if they're talking. I mean, because don't tell me that it's we're just trying to be cautious and we don't want to go to Florida where it's not, where it's free for all, when you had people sitting right next to each other on your pay-per-view. So, again, let's have some continuity here. But if you're going to run, why not run in a place like Texas or Florida where you can actually put some butts in seats? If you're going to do it studio style, then, you got to be a little bit creative to give it a feel as if there's people there, not just 20 or 10 people behind the camera, because that, again, it's not a bad setup. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I also think, if you're trying to go to the next level, or you're trying to be considered more than just, a third, fourth tier wrestling option, you got to make the steps in those directions. That's just, I think. And again, production's a big part of what I like about good, one of my favorite things in wrestling. I like great production. So again, I think that was one of my favorite parts about the NWA that drew me to the show. And I really feel like they've kind of worked their way backwards a little bit. Not too much, but, that's just, I just think there's a way to do studio wrestling where it's really good. It can be really, really good and really well done.
Yeah, and you're a product of it, Kev. I mean, going back to the days of championship wrestling from Hollywood, production was never an issue there when it was NWA Hollywood. It always looked clean. It always looked crisp. And even beyond that studio where they were, either the Glendale studio or their last studio they were at, the Ocean View Pavilion, I mean, it still looked clean. It still had a great look to it. And now that they're in the casino or in Atlanta, it still has that same professional feel. And I think you're right. I think you're right about I think you're right when it comes to, like, look, Florida's right there. And even in the chat, Dave Scooby pointed out that they may move away from the GPB because if they have to fall under such strict guidelines, and I mean, I think that's the best thing they can do. Although I do know why they're in Atlanta for a specific reason. I don't know if most people know this. I mean, yes, it's the historic home of WCW, the Jim Crockett Promotions, that Georgia Championship Wrestling, that TBS, and all of that goodness all wrapped into one. But did you know that there's breaks in your taxes for filming in Atlanta, in Georgia? Like, they're saving money. They're saving lots of money on their taxes by filming in Georgia. Like,
yeah, I'm all about saving money, Jay. I'm all about it, but this is not a business where cutting corners is gonna get you anywhere. It's just not the entertainment business. There's a difference between being efficient and frugal and just being cheap.
Well, look, with all due respect to everyone involved with the NWA, I mean, they took an entire year on their knee, and a lot of those talents were still paid during that time. Now, I don't know how long it takes for Billy Corgan to recoup his losses there, but you're right. At some point, they need to let go of that security blanket, that safety blanket of, well, COVID-19 hurt us. Cool, man. It hurt everybody. In Ring of Honor, it cost them everything. So we'll see. Personally, I agree with you. It's time to let go of that, and you're gonna have to start spending some money again. You got to spend money to make money. That's a very famous line. As a business owner, I know that, and Kev, you know that. You got to spend money to make money, and it's time. It's time for them to start spending some money.
Well, and I want to jump in and jump back into just a little bit about what we said about the studios that they had out in Hollywood when I was doing stuff for them. They never had more than 100 people. I mean, maybe, 100-ish people.
3 at tops.
Okay.
No, in Glendale,
okay, so yeah.
Glendale, like 200 tops.
Right, and that's the point is, it's not like you're talking about, like, having these huge crowds. It's just a matter of, like, having a good enough crowd to get a vibe in the room. That's really all you need to have a good studio and good production and, like, in an awareness of your camera angles and have really, really good editing. Yeah. And have really good product quality control. And, those are the things I feel like the NWA could do better. That, like, I don't know if it's because it's a money thing, if it's a time thing, whatever, but it just seems like they need, like, a little more refinement, like, because, man, if they could tighten up their production a little bit, if they could really optimize camera angles that they have in the building to make the building not look like a barn or look small, like, there's just certain things they could do, like, that they would do in those studios that we used to work at that really made it feel, made it feel like a big deal. And again, I just think that comes down to just, experience and having people around you that actually know how to do that. Simple stuff, like the funniest things, like back in the day, sometimes, like, Adam Pearce was the ring announcer from backstage and no one knew. Like, stuff like that. I'm just saying, like, in the studio, like, they had setups where if you had to, like, make the most out of what you were doing, like, they had a way of making it not feel like it was bootleg and indie. Like, we didn't have a ring announcer that night. okay, no big deal, but they made it sound good. Like, they make it work out right. Like, it didn't feel indie, where you had, like, you know, your opening match's mom, you know, coming in the ring and, like, you know, in sweatpants, like, calling a match. They'd never do something like that. It was more like, you know, let's call an audible, but let's make it look professional and sound professional while we're doing it. And again, I just think those are little things that the NWA could do to do better. You know, but you know, again, like honestly, if we're gonna just talk about the show wasn't too bad. Like I know it was a replay of a match of a couple. I think a couple of matches were replays. I know the Austin Aries match was, but you know, and again, it's kind of questionable because I might be a little bit ticked if I had paid for Hard Times, which I didn't. But I got a freebie off the Hard Times pay-per-view. Got a heck of a match, which kind of flies in the face of like the NWA being a throwback, because that was a modern wrestling match. Like, there was nothing throwback about that match at all. But no, I felt like the show itself was pretty solid. I mean, what they had in the ring and what they put out there was pretty good. So again, it just comes down to like production or the presentation of the product. When they do good, they do good, you know. And I'm gonna let you chew on that for a second, Jay. I'll be back in about 5 minutes. I'll be back on. I'm gonna let you run with it for a second. I'll be right back.
Well, while you're gone, I'm gonna play the audio from both Trevor Murdoch and the audio from Matt Cardona that we were talking about earlier, just so anyone in the audience who hasn't seen it can check it out. And we'll touch base when you come back.
Yeah, I'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Cool. So that kind of took a different direction than I was hoping, but that's all right, because what we're going to do now is we'll play the audio from Matt Cardona. Now, we did this at the pre-party, but I know some of you didn't see it at the pre-party. Maybe some of you don't know what we're talking about. But without any further ado, here's the audio from Matt Cardona from the Busted Open radio show. Again, they're on Sirius XM, the Fight channel. I'm not sure if I'm getting that right. But anyways, here we go.
Do you think you can do for the same thing for the NWA with your social media that you did for GCW?
I want to. That's why I came to NWA, because I've said this on the NWA on Power, and it wasn't just me trying to get a reaction. When I was 6 years old and I watched the NWA, I thought it sucked. I thought everything was just old and dated and boring. And now, 30 years later, it's the same thing. It still sucks. It's still boring. It's still dated. What are we doing? There's a difference between being nostalgic and living in the past, right? Like, there's no entrance music. Like, if you're trying to attract new fans and someone's turning this on, you just got two guys walking out to fight with no music playing. Like, what is this?
I couldn't disagree with you more about the NWA. First of all, 30 years ago, I loved the NWA. And now I love the way the NWA presents itself on TV. It's no bullshit. It's no like high production, relying on other things. They rely on the action in the ring and the characters that are on that show. You couldn't be more wrong about
now,
the
listen,
NWA.
I think NWA as a company is incredible. I was there for the tapings. I had an excellent time. I was never handed a script of what to say, not even bullet points. Just told, you're talking on this show, which I loved, absolutely loved. I love that every week since those tapings, the whole roster gets an email. Here are the things to plug this week. Here are the match graphics. Here are the photos. So they obviously want this to succeed. They're obviously trying, and they're going in the right direction, in my opinion. But I think if you want to attract some new fans, not just the old fans like you, Dave, we need to change with the times a little bit. And if I can help in any way, I'm going to try my best.
So, I mean, those are kind of damning words. And I know that, just listen to what Trevor Murdoch, how he responded on today's show.
And it's the sense of old school values with new school players. It works. It works. And that's kind of, I feel, Billy's vision.
And
correct
that's
me if I'm
exactly
wrong.
no, that's exactly what we're trying to shoot for. We're not trying to be like everybody else. We're not trying to blend in. We're not trying to copycat. We are trying to be in our own lane. And for a guy like Matt to come in and just blatantly come in and then tell everybody with a smile on his face, no offense, but you suck. No offense, but I don't like what you guys do. Like I get offended. I get pissed off with that shit because I'm proud of what we do. I'm proud of the product we provide. And it is different from everybody else. But who is this asshole to come in here and go on the #1 pro wrestling podcast and go out and bury me and tell everybody in the world that I'm not shit? Just like that stupid ass story about I was mean to him. I was mean to him in WWE. He forgot to tell you the other half of that story was the fact that Kate and I asked to work with him because there were no tag teams. And the reason why he was mad and said I was mean to him was because Trevor and Lance didn't want to do the finish that they had brought up. Okay. And it didn't fit the storyline. We were already in an angle with the Hardys about to win the tag titles, but we offered to put them over because we had no teams to work after the Hardys. But it's okay for Matt to come on here and say a 5-second soundbite and everybody think I'm the meanest guy in the world.
So, you definitely want to go search those out. You can find the podcast on Busted Open. I think they're on most outlets like Spotify and Apple. Chris Drummond might even put the links on there. But Chris Drummond says that that Trevor Murdoch sounds scared. And I don't know that I would qualify him as sounding scared. He sounds angry. And I think, the poll here says, do you agree with Matt Cardona? The NWA should adopt a more modern approach. Maybe this is their version of them adopting a more modern approach. Perhaps maybe with Matt Cardona calling out the NWA and specifically Trevor Murdoch on a podcast, on a radio show, on Sirius XM, and there's getting more people talking about the NWA than they have in quite some time. And I'll be honest with you, we're hearing more people talk about the NWA right now than I can recall hearing at the 73rd anniversary show. And that was the big time event that featured Nick Aldis versus Trevor Murdoch. And if you listen to some of the audio that's out there, Cardona kind of compares himself to Nick Aldis in that where Aldis could carry the brand to this point, Cardona says that he's ready to pick up that football and run with it. Trevor Murdoch's not having that, obviously. Trevor Murdoch also was quick to point out, if you listen to the entire interview, that Aldis benefited from having a title reign during before COVID-19. And I mean, there is something to that. We were discussing that with Kevin earlier about the NWA and the venues that it can go to. But let's be honest, Trevor Murdoch doesn't have that same luxury to go out and defend that title in China. Can't get to China right now. In a lot of places, you can't even travel abroad because of this pandemic. Clearly Nick Aldis was able to get to Poland, and I'm sure 100% that Trevor Murdoch would love to take the title to Poland. Recently, he had an interview where he had mentioned that he would like to go to Dubai, of all places, and I wonder if that might become a reality, especially where the growing connection between the United Wrestling Nation and the United Arab Emirates working or already booking some NWA talent like Camille, like Tom Latimer, and even Doug Williams. So perhaps that could be something that is in the works. I mean, you just never really genuinely know, right? But again, this sounds like I don't take it that Trevor Murdoch is scared. I take that he's angry, and he should be angry. Because what have they done for him? They put him in the ring with Attila Khan in St. Louis. Attila Khan isn't a draw. They put him with Gangrel in Jacksonville. Again, how are you going to get mainstream focus on these matches? Now, Mike Knox might be a little bit more well-known than Attila Khan, but let's be perfectly frank, that isn't a money match. Nobody ordered Hard Times to see Mike Knox versus Trevor Murdoch. the storyline up to that wasn't even a very good storyline. Oh, because he shoved my kid down. I mean, that to me reeks of we desperate just to make something happen, and they couldn't get it that way. Chris Drummond says, that's not stopping the other world champions from working. I see Moose, Gresham, Bandito, Camille working weekends. What's Trevor's excuse? Hey, Chris, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. But to one of Cardona's points that he brought up is that Trevor hasn't even left the United States. How are you going to leave the United States right now? You know, Camille is booked to go do a show in the UK last summer, but that got postponed because of COVID. And I haven't seen Moose International. I haven't seen Gresham International, nor have I seen Bandito, unless you count like Mexico. And there is no embargo on traveling back and forth to Mexico. But no, you're right. And this is another thing that I find problematic. And I don't know if it's a byproduct of Trevor Murdoch or if it's the front office of the NWA, because, you know, you're never going to get a straight answer either way. But why isn't Murdoch out there wrestling the house shows? Why isn't he at World Class? Why isn't he wrestling for, you know, I mean, he took the title to Brooklyn, New York. Just a couple of weeks back, maybe his last weekend. And he and Homicide teamed up against Wrecking Ball Legursky and Colby Carino. But again, that wasn't a title match. But again, you can't force someone to book the title either. It's this triple-edged sword, right? Because the promotion wants to do it, the office needs to want to do it, and the wrestler needs to do it. Our pal Kevin's back with us. Kevin, we were just talking about the comments from. I don't know if you've heard those comments. They're out there on Twitter. You can listen to them on the Busted Open podcast, which is the podcast from the world-renowned radio show on Sirius XM Fight Nation. And basically what happened is Matt Cardona came on to Busted Open and just really let the NWA have it, let Trevor Murdoch have it, said that the NWA is kind of old in its ways, kind of compared himself to Nick Aldis and saying that he could be the guy that brings the NWA that next step. Badmouth Trevor Murdoch, saying he was a bad guy while they were working together in the WWE. Also put down Trevor because he hasn't defended the title internationally. He hasn't really had a lot of title defenses. And Trevor came back, you know, very angry and aggressive. Hey, man, you know, I won the title in the middle of a pandemic. What do you want? And to what his point was, he can't go out of the country to defend the title. I know I recently heard in an interview where he had mentioned that he wants to go to Dubai, that he wants to defend the title more. But so far, he's only had 2 defenses outside of an NWA ring, when that was the show in St. Louis where he wrestled Attila Khan, and then again for the Pope show where he wrestled against Gangrel. And then his only other title defense in the NWA was Mike Knox.
How's my audio?
I mean, you always sound low to me, but the people in the chat seem to say that you're okay.
People in the chat, let me know if I sound good or not. We'll go with it. I would say that there's a really, I would say that there is an unnecessary, and this is coming from me, so just bear with me.
Sure.
But there's an unnecessary emphasis put on being the world champion and defending the belt out of the state or out of the country and all that. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying it's not 1985. It's just, and again, I know if DK was on here, he'd be just flipping out because there's just such he puts such a heavy emphasis on this. But, you know, it's more about like you're the world champ and you're the representative of the brand that you're a representative of. Really being a world champion is taking that brand as far as you can actually take it. And that doesn't always mean you got to defend the title across the country, because we're in a day and age where anybody in Dubai can see Trevor Murdoch on YouTube. So, and we're in an environment where we're at least thought that it's safer. Hail Scarneck. Where it's thought, I hope you guys are doing that. Like, I hope I got you guys doing this on the show. It'd be great if you like videoed yourself, or we had some gifs for like Twitter. But no, I just think it's one of those things where we like it's really more about what the champion does for the brand. Yes, Adam Pearce did a lot for the brand, but it wasn't just because he traveled across the country. It was how he did it. He brought prestige to it because he was great in promos. Like, honest to God, Adam Pearce, to me, what made him so great was he to this day is still one of my favorite persons to go YouTube promo searching for. And, you know, like, because his promos were fantastic and he could generate interest like that. And so, again, I just think it's yes, I traveled the country as a champion, but I didn't leave the United States. It's really just more like, what are you doing for the brand? And, you know, is it a world championship? Because if you don't go to Japan, you know, I just think that's overrated. You're a world champion if you take on the top competition and you're bringing interest and you're garnering interest for the brand itself. Like Nick Aldis, maybe he did travel some across the country, but really Nick Aldis, like, defended the belt on different television brands, and that brought attention to the title. So again, I just think it's we need to be relevant, like, to now. And I think with Trevor Murdoch, him being in a storyline with Matt Cardona is world championship material. It's a world championship angle where it's cross-promotional and you're getting exposure with one of the most exposed guys on the internet right now, or not on the internet, but just in wrestling on the independent scene. So to me, Trevor Murdoch is a world champ. He's doing world champ stuff. He's fighting world champ fights. Mike Knox is a big dude that was really put in there for him to have a title defense against. I just think it's a little overrated. You know, it's just like, let's go ahead and like stop with the Ric Flair defending the belt 300 times a year and all that. Let's just stop, because this is not that era. This is not that NWA. You know, let's just be focused on helping the brand move forward. And I think Trevor's doing the best that he can for that.
What would you say, or how do you feel about this comment from our buddy Chris? And he says, maybe it's about respecting the champion, and maybe promoters don't see Trevor worth booking.
I don't disagree with that. I don't. I really don't, because this is the thing. I like Trevor Murdoch, but he's not the reason we watch the NWA. He's not. He's the champion of the NWA, and we watch the NWA, so he's the champ. But we watch the NWA more than anything because of the brand. I would say, if I were to just speak for myself, it's more about the brand. I would say Nick Aldis was definitely a better ambassador of the brand. I'm not going to, and this is not knocking Trevor Murdoch, he's just the champ before him. I would go as far as to say that maybe some other champions, like maybe Jax Dane, drove the brand further as champion than Trevor. But again, it's not a knock. I'm just, let's just call it what it is. Like, one of the things we are on the show is honest. Trevor Murdoch is, you know, would not really main event on too many other major programs right now. And, you know, Nick Aldis is closer to that than him. I'm not saying Nick Aldis would be, but he's closer to that. And so, again, it's just, you know, it is what it is. If Eli Drake was holding the belt right now, we'd be talking about, you know, we have the best champ in wrestling. And that'd be a legit argument.
One more thing, our buddy Dave Scooby says, and I this resonates with me. He said Trevor winning was a feel-good moment and a tribute to Harley, but not sure what plans they had for him after he won. And that's something to think about, and I think NWA fans should think about that. Is it still a feel-good moment? You know, it's been a while since, you know, Trevor won that title back in the 73rd, and we were all very excited for Trevor. But at some point, is it time for the parade to end?
It should have been a short-term title solution to begin with. Like, really, it should have been.
And then what do you qualify as short term? Because I mean, he did okay. So he won it back in August, and the next live event they had was in October, and then the next live event they did was in December.
October, Scar Naked. That October he loses to a heel. Like, that should have been it. They should have already had the next guy up in line ready to take the title.
Well, and that's one thing we know for certain that the NWA is struggling to do is creating these challengers within the brand. Because yes, Trevor Murdoch won the title, and maybe he shouldn't have been a long-term champion, but tell me who on the roster right now did they build up that would make sense for him to lose to?
No, you're right. They don't really have anyone currently. So that really does make it's a serious pickle. It's a serious problem. And it's something that the NWA, should have been thinking about if they were going to take the belt off of Nick Aldis.
And Willie Bowen says that, hey, what about Trevor Murdoch versus Jack Stain?
Speaking of heavyweight title contenders, something I didn't get to discuss on a couple shows ago that's still sticking in my head from a few shows back that I didn't get to mention because I kind of dipped out a little earlier. I was a little late, one of the two. How do you feel about Aaron Stevens' last couple promos?
Well, I mean, his promos have been okay. So what we talked about with Dirty Dango being just weird, right? And you said like, hey, he's right into it. I mean, Aaron Stevens' promos have been out there too, but you're right. They've been entertaining. They've been fun to watch. And it's not like, if you're talking about building up a contender for Murdoch, it's not like they don't have history either. Remember, it was Trevor Murdoch who took that national championship off of Aaron Stevens back in the first season of Primetime Live. But even before then, they were having their beef on the original series of Power.
Right. And if you don't run Aaron Stevens with that goofy angle with Kratos, and you run Aaron Stevens, you have the opportunity to build up a heel that could feasibly take the title, and right now could be holding the belt, cutting killer promos, and really kind of, I hate to say it, I don't mean to be a mean like to Aaron Stevens. This is good for the company, but like a placeholder until that next big time name comes around that can really hold the title for a good amount of time, or not even hold it for an amount of time, but generate interest in maybe a title run. So that's the first person that I think of when we're talking about this is, a heel Aaron Stevens. Have they never turn him face and do whatever the heck that was? He's set right up. He would have been set right up. He was a national champion. I mean, I can't tell them how to book. I mean, I know Thomas Latimer's personal problems, whatever, but why is he? I mean, he would be perfect. He'd be a perfect guy to be trading this title with Trevor.
Our pal Doty agrees with you, and he says Tom Latimer had the potential to be the filthy heel threat that Trevor needed, but the NWA chose to make him the punching bag of Strictly Business. And I mean, that's pretty dead on right there.
Right. Well, then also too, you take Aaron Mayweather, Crimson, who could have just stayed being a badass. Instead, you turned him into a soft character and, took another heavyweight title contender on your roster out of the limelight. You take Jax Dane, who's catching fire, and then you kill him by having him lose matches and struggle on the mid card with Mims. You ask about contenders. I mean, it's all about how you build people, man. And like, the truth is, like, they've got people on the roster. They're just not building them. I mean, like, do you have to build Rodney Mack? Like, you don't have to build him. You just put him in there, have him beat two people, and then fight for the title. It's not hard. Like, they've got people. It's just they're not, like, they're doing too much. They're just not developing talent well.
Do you
that's just really it.
You just said something in it. it resonated with me as soon as it came out of your mouth. Do you think that they're stuck in this formula that they feel like they have to build a storyline to get to that title match instead of just, hey, here's a title match? Because remember, we were about to get Jax Dane. Jax Dane was going to cash in his Money in the Bank, whatever you want to call it, his Championship Series treasure, whatever they call it, and then he got sucker punched by Mayweather. But had he pulled that out and he had that match, and even if he would have lost, at least it would have broken up that formula that there needs to be a reason why they're fighting, right? Because when we got Trevor Murdoch and Mike Knox, it wasn't just, hey, Mike Knox is a worthy competitor. No, they gave Mike Knox that match because he shoved down Trevor's kid. And now it feels like we're building to Matt Cardona and Trevor Murdoch, and based on only the, Matt Cardona's been running down Trevor Murdoch instead of like, hey, these are two legitimate fighters. Let's put them in the ring.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think like the NWA, again, I feel like that the NWA likes to think of itself in a vacuum. When it wants to, like when they want to not hear the criticism, they want to be in a vacuum, and then they want to be like, oh, we're part of the wrestling world when they want to. And so it just kind of like, that's how you get this kind of weird kind of product. And Jay, this is something that I've been saying like across the board that I'm noticing. And again, maybe it's just because I'm getting old and it's always been this way, or it's just something that is worth noting is like, when we know you're legitimately like lying to us, or when we know you're legitimately not like giving us the full truth, and we know it, like we all know it, you lose our faith and trust, and I think that's something that like is kind of unappreciated, like in general. Maybe it's just I'm old now, but it's like the NWA, it's like, you've made it where we can't trust you. And it's really funny because I guarantee you people in our chat will complain the same thing about WWE, will complain the same thing about other wrestling promotions, is because no one's really trying to build any kind of trust. And I can tell you this, like, and again, I'm not trying to run WWE by any chance, because I don't know what it's like to run a multi-billion-dollar company. But I can tell you that, like, I trusted that on Monday nights when I was a wrestling fan in the late 90s, I trusted on Monday nights that like I was going to tune in, and for parts of the show, it was going to be awesome. Like I trusted that. I knew that there were going to be times when Kurgan came out and I'm like, oh my God, like what's on TNT right now? Like, is there a cruiserweight match on? Like, but I'm steady changing the channel back and forth because I want to catch that one or two segments of the show that I can trust is going to be really good. And I feel like wrestling as a whole has kind of lost that. And I think that in anybody, whether it's the NWA or any company in general, if they could just get a piece of that, get us to believe that at least for like a third of your show, it's going to be awesome. Let's just go back to when Pope actually was getting promos. How did we feel about the show, right? We loved it. We were like, oh, the NWA is getting better. It's because there were moments of the show that we could trust that amidst all the whatever, that there was going to be these moments where like, Pope's coming out. It's going to be a killer promo. And he would kill the promo. Like, I just feel like that somebody needs to get a hold of this and figure it out.
Well, I think you just nailed it, right? Because whenever the Pope came out, you knew he was going to kill it, whether it be his match. I mean, look, maybe he didn't have 5-star matches, but he didn't have a bad match, and his promos were always money. You knew when the Pope came out to have a match, it was going to be some good stuff. A lot like how, like you said earlier, Eli Drake. When Eli Drake came out, you knew it was going to be fun. You knew it was something good. So I mean, that's a pretty good thing to note. I wanted to get back to what Dave Scooby said, and Dave Scooby said that should they go with Matt Cardona and Trevor Murdoch at the Crockett Cup, Trevor would have had the belt for 6 months. Do you think it's time to mix things up?
I don't think so right now. I don't think like a quick title change before the Crockett Cup benefits them at all. I do think that it would be if they could sign just sign a 2 pay-per-view deal with Cardona and 2 appearances on Power. You know, like 2 appearances on Power between pay-per-views and 2 pay-per-views. And let him run with the title for a couple pay-per-views. Let him run with the title for a couple of Powers in between the pay-per-views. That's all. Like just simple, like just that. It would at least draw a little bit more interest. And it would allow you to like take a couple of guys in your company and you can build them into chasing for that belt. And of course, whoever you build, you know, you could do it a couple ways or 20 ways, but you know, you could always build somebody to the first pay-per-view and have them lose, and then have them build them again to the second pay-per-view and have them win. You could have a situation where you build a little small feud, have them lose, and then you bring Nick Aldis back and he wins it. I mean, there's things you could do, but to me, I think that this is a click business. This is a, you know, what have you done for me lately? And it's entertainment. And, you know, and again, like, as much as we like to say we want throwback wrestling, go back and watch the 80s wrestling. And besides DKM, like, a lot of that stuff's going to put you to sleep. And a lot of that stuff, you know would not work today. The only reason you really like it is it brings back that kind of reminiscence. You know, what you really want is what they had back then, is what I was talking about, is the ability to like entertain us in a way that we can trust, that we can get behind, and to do it on a consistent basis. And that's what we really want, more than we want the 80s back. We want back that era. We want back a time of wrestling where we could really get behind it and believe that, you know, for segments of the show, we were really going to get like involved.
Now, Doty says he wants Trevor to lose in a strong and respectful manner to whoever beats him. But the way the NWA and Trevor have been presenting themselves, it doesn't seem like he's even treating himself seriously. And I would say no. I don't necessarily agree with that, because if you heard the entire podcast with Trevor Murdoch on Fight Busted Open on Fight Nation Sirius XM, he certainly is fired up. And I don't know, maybe this is 50% work and maybe this is 50% reality, but he sounds fired up. He sounds like a different guy. He sounds like he's going to go out there and punch him right in the face. And that's not the Trevor Murdoch we've seen lately. We've seen the Trevor Murdoch who's trying to be the ambassador to the NWA. What we need is a Trevor Murdoch who's going to pop somebody right in their nose for looking at him sideways.
Let me ask you a good question. You know, they run Murdoch a lot like Steve Austin. Like, if you were to say they run his character, when I say run his character, they, you know, good old boy, butt kicker, brawler, gets out there and cuts a good old boy promo. You know, would it shock you if Trevor Murdoch drank a beer? Like, you know, like, I'm just saying they run him like that. And I'm saying, like, was Steve Austin ever an ambassador? No, I mean, he was, but he wasn't trying to be. You know, you can be the ambassador without trying to be. You can just be that good old boy. I'm going to come out there and I'm going to whoop your, you know what, you know, and I don't care who it is. Roll him out in front of me. I'm going to whoop him. And then afterwards, I'm going to sit in the corner and I'm going to have a cold one or something, you know, like have him not care so much. You know, I don't care if I'm the ambassador of the NWA. What difference does it make to me? I'm trying to feed my family. Who gives a crap if I'm the NWA's golden boy like Nick Aldis? Let him have that. You know what? I'm just going to go out there and punch somebody in the mouth every time they get in front of me, because that's just what I do, and that's what I've always done. Now get the microphone out of my face. Like how hard is that?
No, I mean,
that's
I think
something Trevor Murdoch could say, and it would totally make sense, and it takes all the pressure off of him to have to be some ambassador. Was Harley Race an ambassador?
No.
Not really. He was just good at what he did. Like
Harley Race famously slammed some dude on top of the hood of his car and threatened to kill the man. And after he let him up, the guy asked him to autograph the hood because he thought it was so badass. So, I mean, like, look, I agree with you. I feel like if you can make Trevor Murdoch that dude, like, but sometimes I feel like instead of the old boy Stone Cold Steve Austin, we get the old boy Hillbilly Jim. You know what I mean? And I don't feel like that is conductive to having a really badass champion. And it wouldn't take much, Kev. And you just pointed it out. It doesn't take much to do this. And he's getting there. Like I said, maybe that's these Cardona things. Maybe it's a genuine work and we're all getting suckered in. Because
no, I think it is a work. I think that's what they're saying. That's what they want him to say. Because at least there's an effort here to like have a heel and a face. At least there's an effort here. Because by smashing the NWA's program the way it is, he's actually bringing attention to it.
For sure.
You know, he's defining what the NWA is by saying what it's not. And actually that could be good. Because again, like it just goes back to like being who you are. You know, but when you waffle, when you dabble, that's when you get into like confusion. And that's when you lose the trust of your fans who are tuning in for a specific type of as you say, Jay, flavor of ice cream. Right. It's like, give us vanilla, please. Like, if that's what we're asking for, just give us that, and we're going to be happy.
100%.
Sorry, guys. I'm cutting promos tonight, apparently.
You're on it tonight. You know what? It's pent-up promo aggression. Makes its return in 2022, man. We finally got it back. For those long-term listeners, Kevin would come on the show kind of infrequently back in the old days on the Blog Talk Radio days. But when he came in, he always came in with fire, and we would chalk that up to pent-up promo aggression. Real quick, I want to take the show in a little bit different direction before we get too far into this show tonight. But I did want to talk about we did get another match announcement for the premier live event that is going to be POWERRR Trip out in Valor Hall in Oak Grove, Kentucky. And this one I think is going to be a good one. I kind of feel good about this one. And that is we're getting Anthony Mayweather versus Chris Adonis, a national championship bout. And I don't know for how many weeks we've talked about, you know, Crimson might be a good challenge for that national division. They should stick him in there. And we keep saying, well, you know, Adonis really needs a good opponent to get over. And you know, I think they finally heard us, Kev. I think they're starting to listen into this podcast because they made that match just earlier in the week. And I want to get your take on that. What do you think about that match for the national championship? What do you think about that opportunity for Mayweather? What do you think about the opportunity for Adonis to get a solid opponent?
Jay, do you remember when Brian Cage would wrestle the dude with one tooth, Timothy Thatcher in Hollywood?
Yeah.
Remember? And did they ever cut a promo?
No.
Did they ever say a word?
Nope.
No. Did the matches need any building? Was there even a belt involved? I don't even remember. I don't think so.
No.
What would happen when those two would wrestle, though?
You'd get a great match.
Like we in the back, like us, other people in the back, especially those of us in storylines that had to like meet some kind of criteria based on like booking. We're like, what the hell do we do now? You know, like what? I mean, it's not that they went out there and did all the moves. It's that they went out there and they just had so much, like, they went out there and worked and just wrestled and just had a match and had great matches. And for me, like, I think if the NWA, again, this is my opinion, you know, cut the crap on the promos. Even say that, like, hey, we're not cutting promos on this. Cut the crap. I mean, I think Chris Adonis would be the perfect guy to say this. Like, hey, you know what? I ain't got nothing to say. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to whoop this guy. And it's going to be the best wrestling match of the night. Then you have the same thing with Mayweather. You know what? Talk is over. The belt's on the line. You know what? I'm going to go out there and we're just going to have we're just going to tear the house down and give you guys a great match. To hell with the 5-minute promos and all that. You know what? Just go out there and fight it out. Both of these guys are built similar. Both of them, at least last I saw them, I think Crimson slipped a little bit, but in general are highly conditioned athletes, great shape. Everything matches up in the ring. So just let these guys go out and wrestle, for the love of God. Just let them. And the truth is you could see more interest gained in the national title very quickly with this kind of mindset because the television titles turned into kind of a joke. And the world title, as we've said, is just kind of like a bunch of old WWE wrestlers, fighting it out. And this is actually something, and I know that Chris Adonis was a WWE guy too, though, but you could really upstage everything in a feud like this, because it's kind of like an afterthought. And as long as they give him enough time, and as much as I love Jax Dane, but as little Jax Dane interference as we can get, unless we're just talking about how the match has an outcome. But my big thing here would be that Jax Dane ends up involved in this feud, and they end up with some kind of triple threat match. But hopefully not.
Well, knowing the history of the NWA, they'll turn it into a four-way corners match, and they'll bring Mims into it too. On a side note, what you were saying, just kind of, again, you're hitting me tonight because these things keep popping into my head. We're talking about Adonis as a national champion, and we're earlier talking about potential challengers for Trevor Murdoch. But did anyone forget that Adonis cleanly beat Trevor Murdoch? Well, okay, not cleanly. Let me take a step back there. But he did beat Murdoch to become
decisively
champion. Huh?
Decisively beat Trevor
Sure.
Murdoch.
I mean, there was there was a whole thing where Murdoch was hurt, but still, he's the one that stepped into the ring. Why aren't we getting those promos? Hey, Trevor, I beat you in that ring 1, 2, 3 to win that title. Put me in the match, coach. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, it's ignoring history. It's a selective memory.
Of course. Let's get to the show, because like you said before you had to step away, this was probably one of the better shows that we've got in a while. And the silly thing is like they went into this with kind of a silly mentality, and it kind of delivered. This was a Power Surge episode, so this wasn't supposed to be an episode of Power. This, we've always known that every month we'll get 3 episodes of Power and supposedly 1 episode of Power Surge. This show kind of brought the goods, and it started off real goofy with the Fixers, taking the center stage. They were being goofs. Like, Jay Bradley was churning it up. He was going into character. Wrecking Ball Lugursky was being a goof. But I feel like this kind of a tag team can work in the NWA, and I think it can work really well, especially as they're doing their darndest to be irreverent. They're just, it's stupid, but it's good. It makes sense. And that's exactly what I want from these two guys, is just being out there, being goofy on camera and being, tough in the ring. So I kind of felt like the introduction of the show, again, it was dumb, it was stupid, but that's exactly what I would expect from those two guys. What did you think?
I thought the concept was decent. It wasn't great, but it was definitely better than bad. It was better than average. I mean, it was above average, just the concept alone, I thought. I thought that, again, this was another example of where like good editing and good production could have made it way better. Yeah. Because you got the guys on camera. It's not like was it DK that said that we're not paying for film anymore? Or no, that was Jaden. Yeah. We're not paying for film anymore. Like, you're not paying them by the hour. So, stand there and go until it's good. And if you've got a few breaks or things don't sound smooth, or, you have a joke that you meant to hit and you missed it a little bit, like, go back and film some more and then take the best one. Because I felt like there was some parts of them that was really good. And then some parts I'm like, these guys just need to be directed, they just need a better director to direct them, because they could have been funny. Like the Jay kind of being the smarter of the two. And I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying the character comes across as kind of the orator. And then with the Gursky in the background, that's actually funny. And it could have been funnier, if he would have intentionally led Lugursky astray a few times just to make us all laugh at him. I mean, there's just a lot of things they could have done with that they didn't do, or that they did, but not quite as good as they could have done it. But as a whole, I'm a fan of the Fixers. I like those guys. I like that they had the opportunity to get up there and really kind of show their entertainment value. I really don't think their match should have been the main event, but it also wouldn't have made sense for them to be running the show and their match not be the main event. You know, it kind of almost says, it almost is like they fixed it. And then they had a match where they went out there and dominated. But again, if you're going to do that, I mean, that actually looks like they got over. At least let them, after the show, come out and say, you know, hey, that's what a wrestling show should look like. You know, we come out here, entertain you the whole time, and then we go out there and we beat a top-notch tag team like it's nothing. You know, that's how you fix wrestling or something like that. You know, like let them like take credit for it, because it would have even made them look better. But all in all, I thought it was a cool concept. Again, Jay, maybe you could explain to me why they're replaying a match that I think was on the pay-per-view, right?
Yeah. Well, again, so the Power Surge, in the past, you know, when the Power Surge first happened, it was more of a recap show, right? When it first came out, it was a recap show. And that made sense when it was on YouTube, because, you know, some people might not have caught the first 3 or 4 episodes. But on Fight, you know, everybody who's watching the show on Fight has paid for the show. So the need to have a recap show is kind of redundant. And, you know, the first few episodes on Fight where they had a Power Surge, it was kind of it was pointless. We're getting blown up here.
Yeah, it's pretty good. We have some interesting, I don't even know what that one text says, Jay. I don't know.
I blocked them. It was, I don't know what it was. I think it was Farsi or something. And I'm not trying to be like dumb or anything.
No, but we don't know what he's saying. So, I mean, you know.
It could have been something real. It could have been hate speech for all I know.
Who knows? And I mean, for a couple ugly guys like us, it could have been anything.
I mean, he might have been catcalling too.
But he could have been a Skarnek fan.
And I blocked him.
That could have been like Skarnek has made his way, you know, across the pond, you know, across the Gulf into, you know, into the Middle East. You never know. So
he was going to bring you into Dubai to manage Tom Latimer. I blew it. Going back to the show, I kind of felt like this was the one time where the screw ups and the mess ups I was okay with, because if you watch the credits, they were taking credit for everything, directing, producing, and all of that stuff. So I feel like they had a crutch, right? They blame the production values were bad. It was Wrecking Ball. He was screwed up again. It was Bradley. He didn't know what he was doing. I was very happy with this segment. I thought it was silly. To your point about the pay-per-view match, yes, we did see that. I think they just put that match on there because not everyone saw the pay-per-view. And as we are progressing through the junior heavyweight tournament, that was the one match that people haven't seen yet. So perhaps like that wasn't made available to them. Whereas, you know, the 6-man scramble, or not 6-man, but like 12-man scramble, that Homicide one, that was on the pre-show. So nobody had to pay to see that. And again, all the rest of the junior heavyweight matches have been on USA. So I feel like they're like, well, let me just tell you how we got here with Rhett Titus and our boy Austin Aries. So then that takes us to the next segment where your boy Rodney Mack showing up on an episode of Power Surge, and another thing I wanted to point out how, you know, again, it was kind of this goofy production. You had these graphics that, again, don't normally live up to what Power looks like, but I kind of feel like that resonated because it was, you know, Wrecking Ball Legursky took care of graphics, so that's why they didn't look so good. But damn, Rodney Mack, I mean, it didn't look like he's aged a day. I mean, that's what he looked like when he was in WWE, and he just looks so good. His opponent kind of looked like a much less interesting version of Shane Taylor. Big guy, real big guy. And I could see potential with that dude. But I kind of feel like maybe he might have been a student of Rodney's, because he was out there to take a beating, and a beating he did. I do know that they called Rodney Mack's Cobra Clutch the Euthanizer, which I kind of felt was a good name for a guy like Rodney Mack. Graves got in a little bit more offense than I would have liked because this match was to make Rodney Mack look like $1 million, and it was pretty close. He just looked badass, and the match finished with the euthanizer. Kev, what did you think? I mean, that was the man who was responsible for your training. Him and Jazz trained you. Hell, our buddy Bull is going to be fighting him in the next few weeks. What did you think about that?
I was having some flashbacks watching Rodney beat up on him.
Any PTSD?
Not too much, but yeah, I mean, I know a lot of that. I know how a lot of that goes. Yeah, I mean, Rodney looked great, and it's hard. I think for me, like, it's hard not to be biased, not just because I like Rodney as a person. I mean, he's like a big brother.
Yeah.
Literally family. Like, I don't even know how else to say it. There's just no other way to say it. Like, it's extended. It's family. Brother from another mother. But I also am just a huge fan of his wrestling style too, and maybe that's just because I broke in like that. But I think when I talk to you guys about like polish, certain things that are like intangibles, Rodney and Jazz both, but Rodney especially because we're watching his match, like he kind of embodies those things, like his camera presence, his television presence, his awareness of it, the way he led the match. There were certain elements of the match where you could tell the kid was lost. And, Rodney didn't eat him up. And we talked about this before with other wrestlers, Thunder Rosa, where, you don't have to eat somebody up because you're good. You don't have to. Like, it doesn't benefit anybody to do that. But he did, he did things to keep the kid competitive. I thought the 3 shoulder tackles that the kid gave were great. I thought the way they kind of reversed out of that and Rodney turned that into a benefit for him was good. I've never seen anybody drag somebody over to the ring thing. I forget what that's called. The pole, the ring post, right? And pull their head into it. And in my mind, I'm just going like, this is the kind of stuff Rodney thinks about like on a Tuesday night, like while he's, getting ready to, eating dinner, eating half-cooked chicken and, dragonflies. I mean, I'm not joking, okay? I'm not joking. I'm not making it up. Rotten milk. I mean, like, this is the stuff he thinks about. Hey, Kevin, I was thinking about doing this thing, where I turn the guy's leg backwards. And I'm like, you're not trying that on me, are you? Like, are you? I mean, I'm just saying, he eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff. Again, like, I don't know. Rodney Mack is like a different human. He's one of those people who's like real life is almost more surreal than what you see on television.
The crazy thing is you bring that up is I too have never seen anyone pull somebody's head to the post like that. And it was pretty cool to see that. But then keep in mind that guy had to be pushing close to 400 pounds, right?
Yeah.
And he just dragged him over there like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? This is the interesting thing though, Jay, is it didn't even hurt the guy. I don't mean physically hurt the other guy, the guy he was wrestling. It didn't hurt him. Like it didn't make him look weak or look like a jabroni. It just was like, oh crap, there's Rodney Mack dragging somebody across the ring and oh crap, what's he doing to him? Jesus. Like, I don't know. But again, I just love Rodney's style. It's hard for me to not be biased when it comes to him. So I love that. I wish we could see more of that kind of wrestling. And I think when we talk about the girls match later on, again, Rodney is the kind of a person that you can watch to see the accentuated elements of the type of polish that I talk about. Remember when I told you about Mila? The girl that wrestled Smiley Kylie, what's her name?
Maddie.
Okay. And remember, I think it was last week I was talking about like how Maddie had certain intangibles that you just like, I just noticed it. Like I could pick it out. Like you can just see it. And lo and behold, I mean, Rodney and Jazz trained at the school that she trained at. So, I mean, it's not a big shocker that maybe she has a little bit of that polish in her. And you saw a little bit of the aggression as well.
Oh yeah.
In their match later on. So I thought it was kind of poetic that they'd end up on the same show. And Jay, again, I can't tell you necessarily in the specifics, but I think the eyeball test shows you kind of what I'm alluding to when I talk about this kind of stuff.
So absolutely, and Maddie Renkowski, they just call her Maddie on TV because I think nobody can pronounce Renkowski, and so Maddie versus Kylie. Now we've said for months that Kylie Ray wrestles like a heel. Like she gets in there, she's very aggressive. She's no holds barred. You know, she's very tough. And Maddie surprised the heck out of me last week with her match with Melina. I'd never seen her actually wrestle before. Only have heard about, oh, she's a good wrestler. Oh, she's pretty good. Damn, she impressed me last week, and she did it again this week. Maddie wasn't putting up with Kylie shenanigans whatsoever. Maddie looked very dominant in the early parts of the match, extremely aggressive, definitely had that dog pound flavor to it. I saw you do stuff like that in the ring. And the match was super competitive. Kylie got the win with the crossface chicken wing. But although Maddie took the loss, she still looked really damn good in this match. Both of these girls looked great. And if this is the future of the NWA's women division, man, this might be the next big thing for the NWA. Because these ladies, I mean, the kids would call it a banger. But it slapped. I mean, whatever cool hip term you want to use, that's what this match was. Probably the best match we've seen this far in 2022 for the NWA.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I'd have to kind of go back over the shows, which I'm not going to do before I could just totally say whether it was the best or not. But I can tell you it was the best match on the show, for sure. I feel like Maddie.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't get her name right because it's so simple.
It's the
Renkowski. I like that better. And are we not in a day and age like it's America? Like we have people from all over the world. Can you not take 5 minutes to learn how to say the name right? Like, come on, man. Like, if the last name's not Jones, you can't say it? Get a life, man. Like, come on. Like, it's 2022. Like, anyways, I digress. But the last 2 times I've seen Kylie, and again, I think I hear the phrase, like, she wrestles like a heel, and I kind of don't agree. And I don't mean that to be argumentative. I just mean it from, as DK would say, he almost sounds condescending when he says this, but it's just the truth. Like from a wrestling psychology standpoint of someone who like played the tweener, the heel, the face, like played those roles. Like I was a super aggressive face. Like I was never taking no trash from nobody if I was a face. Like didn't matter if I was wearing a cape or not. Just that was my style. That was the way I expressed myself in the ring. I wasn't gonna not be that way just because I was the face in the match. And that's kind of what I think about with Smiley Kylie. And again, Jay, this is something that I have to fess up to. I didn't know how to not be that way. And it's probably the same way with her. You can't like half measure your effort out there. There's a certain element of you naturally that just comes out, especially when you're out, because it's not all play out there. It's not all like, you're not out there just like acting, there's an element of you that kind of spills over. And I just think Kylie's an aggressive wrestler as a whole. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say she's an aggressive person. Though she's got the smiley thing. And I wouldn't be hurt if she dropped it. Because maybe it's the gimmick that we're getting confused with. Maybe it's not her being a face. It's the way that the face character is being portrayed. Maybe we expect her to be different in the ring. And maybe if she would just be Kylie Ray and just be that, stop kind of playing to that character, she could still be a face. And I think she would even be more likable. But right now, and again, I wasn't a big fan of hers probably 2 months ago, but right now I think she's got the most momentum of any female in the NWA's female division on every level. I haven't seen her have a bad match in like a while. Like, I know she has had some, because I remember it catching me off guard because I expected her to have a better match than that. But I don't even remember what match that was and when it was. I'm just saying. And the other thing that I always look for in an athlete to tell you how seriously they're taking their push is what kind of shape are they in?
Yeah.
You know, like, are they getting a push because of their name, because somebody likes them, or are they getting a push because like they're really getting momentum? And then when they get that push, what are they doing with it? And like, if you can tell, her physique has transformed for the better over the last couple of months. Like, she's probably in the best shape of anybody, man or woman. Let's just keep it in the women's division because it's hard to be in better shape than Tom Latimer. But of the female division, she's in the best shape. Like, she's in better shape than anybody else, including Camille. And that's saying a lot. So I just think that, I think Kylie Ray right now is a hot commodity for the company, and they really need to ride the wave. She deserved to win the match. And Maddie, I felt like, just really made it a great match. It was just a great competitive match. And I felt like, too, does this make Maddie a heel now? Or does it mean that Maddie saw an opportunity to beat a number one contender and she was willing to do whatever it took to win a match? Guys, let's not forget, Hulk Hogan poked people in the eye. Hulk Hogan raked people in the back. Like, there comes a point in time where you got to express that you're trying to win. And you don't really care. And sometimes that actually makes you a good guy because people can relate to that. Like, I don't know if you've ever been in a fight, Jay, but sometimes when you're outclassed and outmanned, you're going to do whatever you got to do to win. And in wrestling, it's all about being believable. And sometimes you got to flip a switch because you see the opportunity that's in front of you. So again, I'm not saying that Maddie doesn't turn heel or anything of that nature. But again, I just saw an aggressive wrestling match of two very aggressive women wrestling. And I don't think that has anything to do with their character. And again, I'm not trying to hobby horse this thing. I'm just saying, this was just a really good match. You had a very identifiable heel in the match. You had a very identifiable baby face. And Kylie didn't look quite so aggressive against a super aggressive heel, did she? It didn't stand out as much, right? She was still the same, but she was actually fighting an aggressive person. So it felt right. So again, great match. Really, I could go through the technical side of what made it good, but I think we all know just by watching it, it was a really good match and one of the better matches we've seen in a long time.
And sometimes you just got to kick Wolfman in the nards.
That's right.
And that was again, I'm gonna just bring a little bit more praise on that match because what we saw, I think, was probably the best women's match since Thunder Rosa and Camille on the program. And again, if you're gonna make Maddie Ranikowski your number one heel, behind Camille, obviously, then cool. I'm good with that. I don't care. I just want to see that same character out there week in and week out. I mean, you're right. Kylie Ray, very aggressive, but it didn't seem so aggressive when she was in the ring with someone who also was very aggressive. Our buddy Terry McDermott says he remembers years ago when there was a bad guy who was a real nice on the mic. His name was Don Duffy. I don't remember Don Duffy, but I take your word for it.
Maybe send us a video. Give us a link to Don Duffy.
I honestly did the Wolfman in the Nards just to pop Luthez here, and he popped for it. Good.
I would say too, Jay, that I want to bring this up just because this is really what drives wrestling more than legends out there hitting or missing matches. This really drives the product to me better than hit or miss legends out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it just really does. Like, this is more of what we need, more of this and less of, because didn't Maddie wrestle Melina?
Yeah.
Right. And it really didn't, Maddie showcased, but you really saw in this match, like, who she really can be if she's out there, in a highly competitive match.
Well, I mean, this Sunday at the Royal Rumble, I mean, you might see, well, I mean, I'm not going to say might, it's all but confirmed that that Melina will be at the Rumble. So I don't know if we're going to see Melina back in an NWA ring. And I'm not sure that's a bad thing. Because again, when I look at talents like Genocide, I know Lady Frost did sign a contract with Impact, but I don't think it's an exclusive deal. I think she can come back to the NWA if she chooses to. But when you see talents like Genocide and Camille and Lady Frost and Kylie Ray, and honestly, Tootie Lynn's starting to grow on me too. And then you've got Maddie Renikowski, and then you've got Allison Kay and Marty Bell. Like, this division's really starting to take some shape. And it's really like, yes, I know they have a tag team division, so I know it's kind of, you're stretching out the talent. I even mentioned Natalia Markova, who has been looking very ferocious in her matches. I mean, she just had on NWA USA, she wrestled that match with Kenzie Page that I know it kind of got thrown out. It went wild, but again, another very aggressive female. This division is starting to really take shape.
I mean, I think it's had shape, and I think it's also time that the NWA realizes where the momentum is, and really, like, they could really leverage it. Like, it really is the part of their show that, as it stands right now, could compete with pretty much any other show.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot. Like, that really is saying a lot. But that's just the truth. Like, that's the most talent they have right now in the company, and the most relevant talent that they have right now in the company. And when I say relevant, I don't mean legends, okay? Like, yeah, you can Google, they're more Googleable and they're more notable, but nobody thinks they're going anywhere right now. No one thinks that, like, any of these people are going to be like the next big thing in wrestling. It's not going to happen. Like, I could go down the men's list, right, and tell you who it's not going to happen with, and tell you the only one that it really probably could happen with would be maybe Tom Latimer, and it ain't gonna happen. In as far as I can see in the crystal ball. But in the women's division, you could name off like 6 or 7 female wrestlers that really and truly could be household names for the next 5 or 6 years, like at any level.
I tweeted this today, and I'm gonna pull it up just so I say it right, because I thought it was funny, and I'm gonna, this is partially my podcast, so I'll just go ahead and say how I feel anyways. But I put, the funny thing about WWE releases, right, is that everyone can't wait to see their favorite superstars show up in AEW or New Japan or even Impact. But if you start looking at some of the releases that are happening in AEW, I'm more excited about some of those folks showing up in the NWA. And that's backwards, right? For everyone else out there, it's like, no, I can't wait to see Brian Cage show up in the WWE or Brian Cage showing up in Impact. I'm telling you, he was already done Impact. What more can he do there? I don't think WWE wants him. MLW has Hammerstone. They don't need both Hammerstone and Brian Cage. But the NWA could benefit from Brian Cage. I'm just saying, it's in the NWA, like, you're right, Latimer could potentially be that guy that can go somewhere else. But the rest of them, like, they've already been there, done that. Like, I love the Pope, but he's not going to AEW. No one is calling Tyrus to get him to come to their show. It's just not happening. Maybe Aldis could have an opportunity in the WWE. I could see that. But, I mean, why would he go? To be a low man on the totem pole? To be the LA Knight? Like, he's the king of the castle here in the NWA. If he goes to WWE, he all of a sudden becomes the smallest pond and the smallest fish in the biggest pond. That doesn't make any sense. And if the money's if the money's close, it's like, why would you even bother to go?
Right. Well, I think we may want to point out some stuff going on in the chat, because they are talking about the junior heavyweight tournament, and they are talking about Austin Aries, and I think it would be a good little rabbit trail just to talk about like maybe who we think, maybe a few just kind of what would you say, a few picks here and there about what we think might end up happening here. I mean, it looks like we've got 2 more matches in the first round to go.
Well, okay, so we saw on this Saturday's NWA USA, Kerry Morton versus the Rude Dudes, Jamie Stanley, and of course, Kerry Morton went over. So we're 1 match away from having these semifinals wrapped up, and that's going to be Darius Lockhart versus Sauronaro. And I got to be honest, I have no desire to see Sauronaro in this tournament or in the NWA as it is right now with his current character. I don't know what I've heard a few things, but I know that Darius Lockhart is a guy that has a ton of potential, and I don't know what they're going to do with him next. But he's supposed to him and Sauronaro are supposed to lock up this weekend on NWA USA, and then that sets up your semis, right, where you're going to have Austin Aries take on Luke Hawk, Colby Carino taking 2 second-generation wrestlers, Colby versus Kerry Morton. You've got Davari versus the winner of Lockhart or Renaro. And then that sets up that four-way match, which I'm just going to assume is going to be at the Crockett Cup. And that's going to, it's Homicide versus, the winner of the semis. And it's not a bad, it hasn't been a bad tournament, right? Of course, I'd much rather see names in there like Scorpio Sky, Chase Owens, and the modern day hero in this thing. But the tournament itself has been pretty entertaining. And of those names that are still on there, like there's a couple guys who I'm really excited to see in that 4-way match. Of course, Homicide's got the buy-in. A lot of our chat is talking about Austin Aries. Who at this point in that tournament, what name in there sparks the most interest for the modern day hero?
Well, I'm not a big Colby Carino fan, and I kind of have seen the writing on the wall that he's most likely going to be the one that is going to become the champion. But I like Austin Aries. I'm pretty sure it's going to be him and Colby. I'm pretty sure it's him and Colby Carino that are going to make it through. I'm pretty sure Davari's going to make it through. But, if you were to ask me, like, who's left and who I would be most interested, which I don't think is going to happen. I'm just telling you who I'd be the most interested in. I would probably say Lockhart is would be the most interesting guy to maybe win the title as the underdog. That would actually be interesting. Given that the NWA really doesn't seem to understand that very well and doesn't really seem to go in that direction too much with anything. Like I said, I think they got their sights set on Colby Carino. And I think, they would have probably been served better for a Colby Carino, Austin Aries. Yeah. Oh yeah. But they would have been served better with an Austin Aries Colby Carino match at the finals. That they probably would have been better served for that, but they're not going to be. They're going to do the same thing that all people do, all the companies do, and put this big cluster together of junior heavyweights so we can have a 5-minute segment of floor dives. But the funny thing is, Jay, no one typically puts on a better one-on-one match than junior heavyweights do. And that's something I kind of find funny, that your best one-on-one wrestlers are typically those guys. And they really constantly seem to rob the fans of that because they really think fans want to see an acrobatic display more than they want to see wrestling.
When I look at the tournament, the name that stands out the most to me is Austin Aries. Like you said, that's not always how the NWA does things that makes the most sense or the most interesting. Sometimes they have that model figured out. To me, I don't put the belt on Carino, and that's just your boy J Cal talking, and it's not because I have a deep-seated hate for Carino, because I don't dislike him as much as you do, Kevin. What I think though is he's the guy that wins the title next. He's the guy that, you know, because if you make a splash now, you're going to get people talking about that title. And if it's Austin Aries, like, look, Austin Aries has been like absent from anything dealing with the NWA since Hard Times. We haven't seen a promo. We haven't seen him eating a banana. I mean, he hasn't been in the ring except for the re-showing of the from the pay-per-view. He's been absent. When we see Homicide every week with La Rebellion, we see Colby every week with the Fixers. We haven't seen Austin Aries at all. So I think, and I'm not that. I mean, that doesn't necessarily make a good point for him winning the belt, but I think a guy like Austin Aries and his reputation, that the man that had the Impact Championship. I mean, I had this video up earlier, and I'm going to see if I can pull it up again. Let me see. Maybe not. When he was the Impact champion, he also held titles in 3 different companies, and he's a former like world champion and again in Impact and Ring of Honor, 2-time Ring of Honor world champion. He's a guy that has some clout, and I know that on the internet he's sometimes portrayed as a bad dude, but he just tweeted the other day, "Hey, all I want to do is wrestle while I still can." And when a guy says that, it makes me kind of want to buy into what he's saying. And putting that NWA World Junior Heavyweight title on a guy who is probably one of the most prolific junior heavyweights in the business today, I think would really hit in some areas. Now, I look at some of the comments, and like our buddy the mayor says, the junior heavyweight tournament is for Austin Aries to win, hands down. But like the mother on When Doves Cry, she is never satisfied. He'll want the 10 pounds of gold, and that still won't satisfy him. And I do think that he is a guy that likes the spotlight. He is a guy that wants. But I still think that's the guy that if you put the belt on him, people will be talking. And then, like, I don't know, give him that match with Leo Rush. Give him a match with Jonathan Gresham. Put some of the best junior heavyweights in the world against him, and then at some point get Carino in there to win the title. And I think that's how I would fantasy book it. I don't know about you, Kev.
No, I agree. I think Austin Aries is easily the most notable name in the tournament. As far as just accomplishments. And I agree with the strategy. I think that would be a great strategy. And I think he's also a guy whose name belongs on the list of great NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champions. I think his name belongs on that list. And so even if it is a short run, I think he's the guy that would be who I think everybody would benefit from that. I agree. Like, I really do agree that he would be the best representative of the championship, and it would make the most sense in terms of getting attention to the title. I agree with that. To me, I think where I wonder where I would say it wouldn't happen, or I question if it is not whether it wouldn't. I mean, can it happen? Because the other side of what you said, that we haven't seen him on the programming but one time. So what kind of money is it going to cost? What kind of, is the NWA willing to put that kind of backing behind someone who's not one of their guys necessarily, that is probably going to demand more money than most everybody, that is going to demand certain certain control of his own character? I don't see the NWA buying into that, because I don't see Billy Corgan's ego, as far as what we've seen, being able to handle a character like that. Austin Aries, again, is very independent and really doesn't need anybody. And so, again, that would probably be where I think the issue would lie, is if he does win the title, how do they keep him, and where do the defenses come in? And I mean, there's just a lot of logistics I think that they would run into that would be a problem on the business side, as we're with Colby Carino. He's their guy. They can roll him out on TV when they want to. They do what they want to with him when they want to do it. And again, that fits more what we've seen from the NWA as a whole, which is a little confusing, because some of the guys they're paying, I think, you'd be better suited paying Austin Aries.
100%.
But if you were paying him already, he would be on the program. He would be cutting promos. We'd have videos. There'd be something about him, but we haven't seen anything. You know, he just seems like a hotshot guy, a guy they're bringing in just for the name value. You know, the only guy they've put any real marketing around is Carino and Homicide.
Yeah.
Those are the only two really guys they haven't put a whole lot around Davari. Luke Hawx, I think, is like, they have, but more as a tag team wrestler, not as a singles wrestler.
Yeah.
So again, and I mean, I God for like if Kerry Morton wins the title, I'm done. I can't, I won't. I'm joking. But I'm saying like nobody else really is that deserving. I like Lockhart just because he brings an element of unknown, and like I said, it's interesting but very unlikely that he even gets past the next round. So, anyways, there's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is just two guys talking about it with a historic reverence for the NWA. Of course, you guys know Kevin is a former world junior heavyweight champion, and you know it doesn't benefit him to badmouth that division at all. And when we talked about this on the Pound for Pound podcast, we did a retrospective on the junior heavyweight division, and to see somebody's name like Austin Aries line up with guys like Tiger Mask and the Ultimo Dragon, and all of a sudden I'm forgetting names, Great Sasuke, and then going back even further to guys like Rocky, or earlier Rocky Romero, but going back later to guys like Kevin and Danny Hodge and some of the guys,
yeah, Dory Funk and Vern Gagne, Justin Liger's on that list.
There you go.
There's a bunch of names of great wrestlers that have held that belt, and I just think Austin Aries' name fits on that list. And who knows? He does have an ego. Who knows? He might want to work with the NWA a little bit just to get his hands on the title for a certain amount of time, and it benefits everybody. And I'm all for it.
And look, we said early in the show that this is the time right now. Billy needs to start opening up that wallet and booking some of these matches. Leo Rush, if he's out of contract with AEW, are you telling me that a match between Austin Aries and Leo Rush wouldn't draw? Are you telling me you couldn't fill out 1,000 to 5,000 seat venue with that match?
No, it'd be a great match. It'd be fun. It'd be fun to watch.
What's your dog's name?
Jessie.
Jessie. Hi, Jessie. Jessie, a good girl? Good boy?
She's trying. She's a girl. She's working on it. Her mother's in there making food for her, so her focus level is low. Jessie, you ready? You ready? Yeah, she's ready. You hungry? You hungry? Oh yeah, look at that. You hungry? Yeah, she's ready. She's got that look in her eye, man.
Okay, so then we spent a lot of time talking about the junior heavyweight tournament, and I think that was better suited than talking about Rhett Titus versus Austin Aries, because although it was a great match, we already talked about that. We talked about that a couple weeks ago at Hard Times. I don't have a problem with them airing this match on Power Surge, because again, it kind of brings the whole thing full circle. If you didn't order the pay-per-view, at least now you know how Austin Aries got there. Plus, it just showcased a hell of a match between two really talented individuals. And of course, we know at the premier live event, you know how I keep saying that instead of pay-per-view, it's a premier live event. We're going to have a returning Rhett Titus take on your boy Colby. And that match at the Power Trip might have some junior heavyweight implications depending on when they crown this new champion. So I'm all about that. But then that takes us to basically the last segment of the show, which is if I can pull up the graphic here, we get the Fixers versus Miguel Robles and Fable Jake. We haven't seen a lot of either of these guys. I think I saw Miguel Robles on the inaugural episode of NWA USA, or maybe it was on Power. I'm not sure. But this guy, He's not a bad worker. Fable Jake, I'm not entirely convinced I like him or dislike him. But this match was essentially used to make the Fixers look like a dominant tag team. They came out there, they worked well together. They beat these two guys up. The finish saw Wrecking Ball Legursky do a cannonball into the corner on top of, I think it was Miguel Robles, and that ended the match, and that pretty much ended the show. Again, we talked about the Fixers all night, the irreverence, the silliness, the goofiness, but it was fun. And that's something that I think that a lot of these Power Surge episodes have been lacking, is fun. So I was happy with the show. I think this was a step in the right direction for him. Kevin, what did you think about this match? What did you think about the show?
I thought the match was okay. I mean, it was what it was. It did its purpose. Not a whole lot to say about it. I thought the show was okay. I mean, I didn't have a lot of expectations, but honestly, when you got Rodney Mack on the show, and you've got Kylie Ray and Maddie, like that alone. I mean, all that alone. I mean, she's good, and I can't believe I can't get her name right. But all in all, I thought the show was pretty good, man. I mean, you had like, it was a pretty stacked show if you really think about it, like on paper. So, I mean, it was one of the better shows the NWA's thrown out there in a while. So kudos to them. And it's amazing what happens when you don't have a bunch of nonsense going on the show, and you just put good wrestling out there, and all of a sudden the show's good. I swear I've heard that before somewhere. I don't know where we've talked. Somebody's talked about it somewhere on some crazy podcast.
Well, and the other thing too is, like, so there was no Kyle, there was no May, there were no backstage promos, there was no wasted time, cutting silly, drinking blood or, possessing a wrestler. I mean, nothing dumb happened. I mean, silliness happened, sure, but nothing dumb happened. Nothing that insulted my intelligence. And that's what I like the most about this show is I got some pretty good wrestling. I got some goofiness, but nothing made me feel bad for watching it. You know what I mean?
No. It's wrestling, man. Like, it's wrestling. It's okay to be funny. It's okay to do stuff like that. It's just still give us, like, solid content, okay? Like, take it seriously when it's supposed to be serious. And again, I just think this goes back to like a lack of understanding in leadership or management in terms of just when to do that. When is it time to get serious, and when is it time to joke? When is it time to not have a convoluted story? When is it time to, have that sort of thing? It's just, again goes back to kind of a inconsistency, but it would be nice to be able to trust that I'm going to see a good wrestling match or two every show, and I think it would help make up a lot for, or a really good promo from that sort of thing. But until they have that, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to trust that when I watch the show that they're going to really deliver. I really want to trust it, though. I mean, personally, I do.
Terry McDermott says this was the best Surge episode so far, and I can't disagree with that. Just wrapping up the poll in the live chat on YouTube. Do you agree with Matt Cardona? The NWA should adopt a more modern approach. 54% of the voters said no, and 45% of the voters said yes. So I mean, it's pretty close, but I think most of us are happy with the traditional approach that the NWA takes in presenting its product. Now, this is normally the time where we would end this show. But last week I said, let's leave them on a high note. Let's talk about Kevin's debut for Insane Hardcore Wrestling. I know DK's not here. Kevin, do you want to tell the story now, or you want to leave it at one more week when DK joins us next week?
Yeah, let's hold off. Let's hold off when DK's back, and we'll open the show with it next week. We'll keep them on we'll do like what the NWA does and keep go cliffhanger to cliffhanger and not fully deliver.
Well, we're supposed to get that World Heavyweight Championship match. Maybe that's next week on Power. We'll see. But again, we want to thank you all for joining us this week on the podcast. Dodie just said
he asked the same question I did.
Yeah.
What is modern wrestling? Like, what is that?
So
I think that needs to be clearly defined, because, I mean, the Austin Aries versus Red Titus match was a modern wrestling match. The match between the two girls. I mean, you had two female wrestlers wrestling for 20 minutes or 15 minutes.
So
modern wrestling.
I'm the one that posted the question, right?
So help me out.
So the way I meant for it to sound like was Matt Cardona's biggest complaint about the NWA is that it has a lack of exposure. He said, like, one of the things he pulled out is the way that they present the show on YouTube. It's not on a major TV station. It's not, it's on YouTube and it's on Fight. That they don't even have theme music. How is that supposed to get the fans excited about the matches? So to me, it's kind of specifically to how you can access the show, how the show is presented, not necessarily the wrestling. And Cardona said it like, hey, I love the NWA. No one gave me a script. They told me just go out and talk and say whatever I wanted to say. No one tried to manipulate me and how to approach it. It was just go do you. So I guess when I was asking the question, it was more dealing with promos, pyros, the fact that it's in a studio as opposed to an arena. That's all.
No, and I don't have a problem with any of that. I just think they kind of betray that when they do get into a venue, because all of a sudden you have an entrance, all of a sudden you have music, all of a sudden they would do pyro. I bet you money if they could.
Yeah.
So it kind of just I don't know. I don't mind it. Like, I don't need entrance music. Doesn't bother me one bit. Or I'm looking for wrestling content. I'm looking for good promos, people in shape, and like good wrestling. I guess I'm not hard to please on that end. So, and good production. And pyro doesn't necessarily mean good production. Neither does entrance music.
Pyro doesn't hide bad production. That's for sure.
No.
Kevin, how can folks follow you on social media?
How do I point at this thing? There we go. Wait. There we go. Right there. See that? Kevin Lee Frazier. I did that for you guys. So you look on there. You look that up on Twitter or Instagram, and you'll find me retweeting Alliance blog posts, making random sports comments related to stats, mostly baseball, or related to running backs. Definitely might hear me talking about the Dallas Cowboys, the Texas Rangers, the futility of either or Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks. So that's most of my Twitter content. Right now, most of my Instagram content is the fact that I am a new to be father in August. So a lot of that's going to be about my kid. If you don't like that, then don't follow, because my kid is going to be amazing and famous, and who cares if they're famous or not, but they're going to be Instagram famous on my Instagram. And then also, if you're interested in just any of my wrestling, like if that's something that intrigues you, if you're like, well, who's this guy? And, what did he do? And how dare he come on here and talk about wrestling like he knows? You can go onto YouTube. You can search Kevin Douglas. You can just type in Kevin Douglas Wrestling, and there'll be plenty of matches out there. And, at one point in time, I was known as pound for pound the best wrestler in the world, and I pinned, Bryan Danielson's shoulders to prove it. And of course, as we talk on the NWA, I was a former NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion, and beat some of the best in the business during that time. So give it a watch. I don't get paid for it. Somebody's getting paid out there, but it ain't me. But
Yeah, that's literally why we called that junior heavyweight retrospective pound for pound. That was paying homage to you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught on to that.
Anyways, guys, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. You are always fun to watch in the ring, but you're more fun to have here next to me every week talking about this stuff. But that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, we'll see you at the matches. Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.